Hey everybody. So we're gonna go do the notes from last week. First up, well, actually, this should be second, but is Alexander the Great. I asked you what great meant to you, and you typed out lots of different things, which was great. So here's a little bit about him. So a little background. His father was named Philip II, and he came from a little kingdom north of Greece, technically, or Athens, known as Macedonia. And he became king in 359 BCE. His main goal was to unite Greece and destroy Persia because they conquered him and he didn't like that and all that kind of stuff. So he created a very big, great army and did very well. Unfortunately, Greece did not want to listen to him. They wanted to continue with their city-states and stuff like that. And so he, instead of working with them, he pretty much just took them over using this army and did very, very well. So much so that he beat everybody in Greece and conquered all Greece. How was he able to do it? Well, he actually used a lot of the strategies that Greek armies used in battle. For example, he used the phalanx, as you can see in this picture. And each soldier holding a spear pointed outward to fight enemies. They were all protecting each other with their shields, that kind of stuff. But he did improve their ideas by just making their spears really, really, really long, longer than this. A lot of you guys said if he didn't have that, he probably would have lost, which is probably right. But he also had cavalry that was really good and archers that were really good as well. After conquering Greece, excuse me, Philip turned his attention to Persia. He planned to march east and conquer the Persian Empire, but he never made it. He was assassinated. He was murdered in 336 BCE. While celebrating his daughter's wedding, he was poisoned. And when he died, it passed his little empire, his plans passed on to his son, who was Alexander. He took over about age 19 or 20. And I asked you how you thought he was going to rule. Most people said pretty good. Some people said bad. But we're going to find out here in a second. So Alexander was born in 356 BCE. He was known as Alexander III of Macedon. When he came into power, he was about 19, 20 years old. 6 years later, he was very accomplished, had a huge empire, and was pretty awesome. And he got that way because his father provided education, very good education for him. And it was through Aristotle, who we're going to talk about on Wednesday. Aristotle was renowned for his philosophy, his teachings. And he taught Alexander all different kinds of stuff, science, literature, philosophy, math, all that kind of stuff. So when Philip died, the people of Greece, specifically in Thebes, rebelled. They thought that the Macedonians would not have a really strong leader in Alexander, and they didn't want to be part of their kingdom anymore. So Alexander went immediately down to Thebes, and within a year he destroyed all of Thebes, like the city itself. And then he made them slaves, all the people that lived in Thebes. And he used it as an example to anybody in Greece, be like, hey, if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. And it worked. He then attacked Persia, whose army was a lot larger than his own, but he easily defeated them time after time, primarily because of the phalanx and the spears that I mentioned earlier. Now, there is a legend that when Alexander visited a town in Persia Empire named Gordium, that he heard about a knot tied by an ancient king that was said to be like untieable, that you if you did untie it, you would be able to rule all of Asia. And he took his sword out and he cut right through it. Alexander did, and that he took it as a good sign that he would conquer a lot. Now, I asked you if you thought that was a good sign. Most people said yeah. Some people said no because it was a really important sign and all that. He created this huge empire, taking over Persia, Egypt, all that kind of stuff, often outnumbered, but they won anyway, primarily because of the cavalry was so much better than anybody else. And remember, the cavalry is the horse-drawn soldiers, and did very well. He went from Persia to Egypt, Egypt to Mesopotamia, Mesopotamia to India, and conquered a little bit there too. Another legend says that his horse, Bucephalus, or Bucephalus, if you want to say that, was an untamable horse, and at age 13, he was able to tame it or ride it, which was really interesting. His father was like, wow, this kid's going to be amazing. He's going to be great. And that's where he kind of gets the name Great, besides this huge empire that he creates. But the horse was a dark-colored horse, very large for Alexander, and did very well. And I had to draw what you thought the horse looks like. All right, so here's the yellow is where he went. So I talked about he conquers Persia, he conquers Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and essentially he creates the largest empire that the world's ever seen thus far. I asked you if this makes Alexander great. A lot of people said yes, obviously. But he never lost a battle. That's one of his accomplishments. And one of the things he did, he loved Greek culture. He worked to spread Greek stuff all through his empire, the places he conquered. He built new cities named after himself, Alexandria. And in those cities, he built temples and theaters and things that they had in Greece. And he encouraged Greek people to move to those places to make it Greek, thus spreading the language and knowledge like art and literature and all that kind of stuff to those places as well. But he also encouraged the people that he conquered to keep their own stuff, language, money, all that kind of thing. So it was a little bit Greek and a little bit Persia, a little bit Greek and a little bit Egyptian. And that's what we call Hellenistic, meaning that it's Greek-like. So he created a Hellenistic empire in which Greek culture was there, but also other cultures as well. Unfortunately, he was not very good at being a leader, like making all those law decision type of things. He was a very good commander. He just could not lead very well. And he didn't do a whole lot of rebuilding. He built cities, but he did not rebuild cities. He was not very good at that either. He did die at the age of 32, 33. And some say he was poisoned. Some say it was natural causes, illness, battle wounds, infections, all that. But we do know that he was good at conquering. He probably would have conquered most of Asia if it wasn't for his death. He was good or bad. He did have a significant influence on history, spreading the culture of Greece, things like that, the Hellenistic Empire that we know, just learned about. After his death, he didn't have an obvious heir to take over the kingdom, and nobody knew who was in power. So in the end, he divided the power between three generals, the highest generals, Antigonid, Ptolemy, and Euclid. And basically, they each got part of the empire. Like Ptolemy got Egypt, Euclid, I can't say it right, got Macedonia, and Antigonid got the Syrian area or Persian place. They all did eventually end up getting taken over by the next people that we'll talk about, with the Romans. He's mostly shown in a lot of artwork, Alexander, as a mythical person, and very, long hair, curly hair, very handsome type thing. Has armor, shining armor. Looks like he's amazing kind of thing. Almost like he's a god, as you can see. And then I had you guys tell me what was common with each of those things, and then I asked you to list things, and that was it. So, if you did miss anything, make sure you pause the video and all that kind of stuff and get it in your notes.